Evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Rick. I'm the Manager for Emergency Services in the City of Swan. Tonight, I'm joined by the City of Swan's Fire and Emergency Management team. I'm going to go through a quick presentation this evening, just talking about bushfire preparedness as we head into the high threat period in the city. Expect this presentation will go for about 15 minutes and the opportunity to ask question and answers through the presentation. Just some quick housekeeping before we start this evening. The City's team will be muting everybody and their video and audio. There'll be an opportunity to ask live questions through the chat with the fire team, and they'll be running through the meeting so you can ask questions. So if you'd like to join the chat, click on the chat button or add participants and then click chat, depending on what device you're using in the meeting. So during the course of this session, we're looking to cover off on seasonal outlook in terms of what we can expect for fire behaviour and conditions through the City of Swan, what you can be doing to prepare your property and make sure that you meet the city's inspection program, the City of Swan Fire Hazard and Management Guide. We'll talk about where to get access to emergency information in the city, and then the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, or DFES's 5-minute fire chat. So making sure that you've got a plan and you understand what you're going to do if a fire threatens your home. So talking about seasonal conditions as we lead up into summer, currently we are 3 to 4 weeks ahead of what we would expect fire conditions to be across the City of Swan. So we use a number of indices provided by the Bureau of Meteorology, and those readings are currently telling us that fire moving in bushland at the minute is going to be about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of what we would normally expect in the City of Swan. And we can validate this information from the fires that we've had to deal with throughout the district currently. Observed fire conditions throughout the district have been increased, with the fire activity observed by firefighters and fire crews well above what we're experiencing or what we should experience at this time of year. Seasonal conditions are going to have a big impact as we move into the later part of fire season. So it's dry now. The soil dryness index is peaking at a point well above what it would normally be for this time of year. So 108 up in Pearce, which by average or by comparison to last year was around 60. So the traditional fire seasons are continuing to change, and we experienced fire conditions well into July this year. So up until July, we were still supplying resources across Perth Metropolitan, chasing uncontained wildfire because of the dryness. So preparing your property is the best way that you can have a well-prepared property to make sure if a fire moves through your property that you know what the impacts are going to be on your property. You know where you're going to go. What are you going to do? Are you going to prepare to stay? Are you going to leave? What is going to be your trigger that determines whether you're picking the family up, picking the dogs up and moving to a relocation centre? There's a number of things that you can do prior to fire season to make your property more defendable for firefighting and firefighting operations. And a well-prepared property will reduce the risk of an impact of fire moving through your land. So most importantly, that's going to reduce the risk for firefighters, so city firefighters and firefighters from surrounds who are coming to support operations in the city. It's reducing the impact of fire. It's providing defendable space for firefighting operations, and it's giving those firefighters the best opportunity to be able to defend your structure. So preparing your property can be done all year round. It's actually it's better to get into a maintenance program, so we don't get to this time of year and go, fire season's 2 weeks away, we need to get into it now and get things sorted. What we find is better is if you develop a maintenance program where you continuously chip away at little things around the house, make sure the gutters are kept, make sure that we're maintaining asset protection zones, make sure that we're looking after flammable materials around our property and removing them away all year round. It doesn't become so burdensome when it comes to fire season, and you're compounded by the fact that we're 3 weeks ahead of where we would normally be. So there's lots of great information available to assist residents in preparing their property. That's found on the city's website, or another really good way to find that information is jumping onto Google and looking for the DFES fire chat. It covers off on a lot of great information in terms of what you can be doing as a resident to reduce the risk on your land, and making some of those trigger decisions around, am I going to stay? Am I going to go? And where am I going to go? We all know from, well, we may not all know, but those that have been through it know that the impact of fire will change your thinking on how fire will move through the landscape. The first thing that occurs during a fire response is the isolation of power, which for most people will have an impact on the way that they're able to deliver water on the property. So understanding that the first thing that firefighting operations will do is isolate power to the community, which will have a bearing on your ability to put up the garage door, to open the electric gates. As time goes on, you'll continue to have a drain or strain on mobile towers, which will have an impact on your ability to communicate with your family. So knowing this in preparedness allows you to put provisions in place to make sure that if this does happen, and those that have lived in the Swan community for some time knows that our community does come under bushfire attack quite regularly through the high threat period, what are we going to do to make sure that our property and our plan is well documented and well communicated within the team or within our family? One of the things that the city is able to do through the fire and EM emergency management team, they're able to come out on site and give you free advice. That service can be booked through the city by either sending an email to swan@swan.wa.gov.au or contacting the city on the 9267 number to book an appointment. And the team can come out and talk to you about the preparedness of your property and help tailor a fire response plan for your land or for your site. You have to make an appointment with officers to do that, and appreciate that resources are limited across the city, but booking an appointment to make the fire and emergency management team come out, have that conversation and give some subject matter expert advice on how you can prepare your property is a good tool to use as well. So it's important that we all understand that preparedness is a shared responsibility, and certainly the city is well into its program now, looking after its reserves and road management across the city. And we have teams working to slash and manage road reserves and breaks as best as possible. It's important that we all do our bit and make the community as safe as possible. The hazard reduction notice details the legal obligations or requirements for properties within the city of Swan. The fire hazard reduction measures must be in place annually by the 1st of November and maintained through till the 1st of April. And what we're seeing is fire conditions extend longer. As I said before, we were moving into July almost this year where we were still chasing wildfire. So we need to make sure that our properties are maintained and prepared. So we're talking now about an asset protection zone. An asset protection zone is an area of low fuel, which is around your property. It's designed to put some defendable space between the vegetation and your structure. So this is the area that firefighters are looking to work within. 20 metres is what we use as the benchmark for an APZ. Obviously, if we can extend that and develop it based on conditions around your house. So if you've got slope, then obviously that may need to be extended, and the fire and EM team are able to help you. So if you do have slope affecting your structure or your property, then we are able to provide the fire team to come out and give you some commentary around how you can best do that. It is important to note that all properties, regardless of their size, will require an APZ. The list on the screen, so the slide you can see currently, gives some good detail with regards to what's required to achieve an asset protection zone. Full requirements for an asset protection zone are available on the city's fire hazard reduction notice. We'll quickly just run through some of the things. So making sure that fuel loads on the site are 2 tonnes per hectare. And I understand that not everybody will be able to interpret what 2 tonnes per hectare looks like. The city's fire team are in a position to be able to support you through that. So if you do need advice, I encourage you to make contact with that team who are able to support you through that process. So making sure that we keep the tree crowns away from overhanging buildings. Obviously, it's dropping fuel loading into structures. During a wildfire situation, we have embers blowing ahead of the bushfire. So making sure that flammable material that builds up in your gutters is removed is going to increase your building's likelihood of surviving fire moving through. So under pruning trees to 2 metres and making sure shrubs that are taller than 2 metres are not located within 2 metres of the structure. why that's really important is that that becomes ladder fuel. So when we refer to ladder fuel, it's the transition between surface-based fire that travels up into tree and causes it to reach into the canopy. So once it reaches into the canopy, fire conditions become quite extreme and it becomes quite challenging for firefighters to be able to bring those fires under control. So the best method that we can use is preventative and making sure that we separate, keeping it pruned, keeping it under 2 meters is the best thing that we can do to stop fire from reaching that tree canopy and giving your structure the best likelihood of succeeding through a bushfire. We talk now about fire breaks. So fire break is it is twofold in its purpose. So a fire break for a low intensity fire will contain the fire. So when we talk low intensity, it may be escaped burns, it may be a lower fire danger rating day or more favourable conditions. We had a wildfire move through some wild oat on Campasic Road, Lancewood Road a few years ago. That was contained by the fire break, a well-kept fire break, and we were able to stop that fire before it reached the back of Wollonga National Park. Obviously, once it starts to reach heavier fuel and heavier timber, the resource requirements, the threat to community increases, fire moving through grassland, we were able to contain that using the fire break network there. If a fire doesn't get contained by the fire break, it's providing us with access to be able to get fire appliances in, to work freely around your property, to work freely around your neighbouring property, to make sure that we've got unrestricted access to do what we need to do to make that as safe as possible. So a fire break needs to be located inside your boundary and as close as what is practicable to the property's boundary. So any property over 5,000 square metres requires internal boundary fire breaks. So they need to be maintained as a mineral earth or reticulated mown grass. So that is that it's not flammable, it doesn't have a flammability range, it's not going to carry fire, and it's not going to increase the fuel loading or the threat to fire moving across your property. So a fire break needs to be 3 metres wide with a 4 metre vertical clearance. So you can see a photo of a fire appliance, and this is a common fire appliance, not only in Swan, but certainly across the Darling Scarp and wider metropolitan. But this is a typical fire appliance that will be working at a bushfire in your local community. You can see it's 3 metres wide, it's 9 metres long and 4 metres tall. These are difficult machines to drive off-road in the best of times. We need to do what we can to make sure that we've got an ability to work around properties uninhibited and access as best we can. So slashing fire break or slashing your property. A grass fire is a very quick and fast moving fire. It's aerated, it has lots of access to the available wind around it. So they're a wind driven and a wind dominated fire. So if we have a grass fire that takes hold at this time of year with a southwester behind it of 20 k's, it will be a quick moving fast grass fire. So by mowing and grazing pasture or managing the grass on your property, you significantly reduce the rate of spread and intensity of a grass fire by removing the available fuel for the fire to consume. In this time of year, grass dries out very quickly. For those that are following the weather this week, it's 35 degrees in Midland on Sunday. That's going to continue to dry out the available fuel in the grassland. The risk at this time of year is clipping rocks and sparking fire while we're trying to put our fire breaks in. And every year we experience it up here. So we really need to be mindful when we're putting in our fire breaks or we're slashing our paddocks to make them safer. We need to consider the day that we're doing it on and just be a little bit mindful where we're driving our tractor when we're going through the paddock to mow it. Make sure as far as possible we're not driving over rocks, because it only takes one spark and then we're off and racing. So we certainly encourage paddocks to be maintained and well kept, because it will stop the spread of fire through those paddocks. But we need to be mindful that at this time of year it dries out very quickly, and best days to do it are days after it's rained or days where the fire danger is reduced. So if you are maintaining grazed pasture across the city, the grass can actually remain a little bit longer and it's able to stay until the 1st of December. All other properties over 2.5 hectares are required to be made at 100 mil or less. So any property in the city which is 2.5 hectares must maintain any grass adjacent to the fire break at no greater than 100 mil, and it needs to be at a minimum width of 3 metres. So as I've said the whole way through this evening, the city has a fire and emergency management team, and they're here to engage with you to better prepare your property for the emergencies likely to impact through the city of Swan. They have a lot of experience in terms of fire preparedness and planning. They're a great asset to the city. They can provide you advice on fire breaks and vegetation management. They assist with the volunteer brigades across the city, but they also drive a lot of the community engagement and education and preparedness across the city. So it's a really good asset to have. It's available to members of the community to be able to engage with, and you can do that by contacting the city. This team also has a wide-reaching network in terms of other government agencies and land managers, and have an ability to engage with them to manage risk on their land as well. So if you have neighbouring property which belongs to a government agency or another stakeholder or significant landholder, these team are able to act as a conduit to help engage with them and better manage that tenure next to your property. So this team's managing the presentation this evening. You can make contact with them by calling the city's number on 9267 9267, or by emailing the city at swan at swan.wa.gov.au. So we talk now about the preparedness activities, and we've got to the point where unfortunately fires broke out. It's really important that we take our information from a consolidated source. It's easy to refer to social media posts and local information, but what is really, really important is that we take it from a validated source where it's come from the incident ground. That data is validated. We know that what gets posted on this website is current. And that's why we experience delays sometimes in terms of information being provided. I know through experience in managing incidents that community is very quick to provide advice on what they believe is the best escape route or egress route for someone to be leaving from an incident. Unfortunately, sometimes they're only seeing a portion of what's going on in the community in terms of what that fire is doing, where it's been, and where it's likely to impact, which is why it's important that we do take that information from the Emergency WA website. That information is coming from fire incident managers, whether it be local teams here in the city of Swan, whether it be neighbouring in Shire of Mundaring. This is the central place to get validated data, validated information on what the fire is doing and where the fire is going towards. And if the fire is at a point that warrants it, your local advice on what you need to do to enact your bushfire plan in terms of relocation. So it may be giving us specific instructions that we need to head west along 2J Road, or it may be that the fire has developed to a point now where it has become unsafe to leave, and the advice is that you are to shelter in place. We've had previous experiences in the city with bushfires that have occurred in some of the more residential parts in Ellenbrook, where photos have been taken from incidents in Victoria and shared online representing the fire that's occurring in Ellenbrook, causing chaos and panic that didn't need to occur because the fire in Ellenbrook was nothing like the fire that was being shared on social media. So it's really important that as a community, we understand that going to the Emergency WA website, listening to the ABC 720, jumping on the DFES Facebook page or Twitter, or even calling the information line is the best way to get validated information from incident commanders out of the site. That site also provides you with a current fire danger rating and any declared total fire bans. So fire danger rating, when we talk about the 5-minute fire chat, will give you some indicators on how fire is likely to behave in the landscape during a period. So we forecast 1 day at a time. And in City of Swan, we have 2 forecast districts, which are split across Great Northern Highway. So if you live on the western side of Great Northern Highway, you are covered by coastal plains. And if you live on the eastern side, Great Northern Highway, you're covered by Perth Hills. So it's important to note that we have 2 different fire danger ratings in the city. and you take the one that's most appropriate for where you're living or where you're going to be working, because not necessarily going to be at home. You may be working away from home or somewhere else in the city. Total fire bans are imposed by the Department of Fire and Emergency Service. The City of Swan has nothing to do in terms of imposing total fire bans. However, we deal with the repercussions of a total fire ban being imposed. They are imposed on days of high threat to the community. So it's not done something lightly. It's done when the fire weather poses a serious threat above the normal to the community. And that information is provided to senior officers in the department. There's a wide stakeholder group who's engaged to help enable that decision. It's wide-reaching in terms of government agencies and other peak bodies that need to have buy-in on that conversation, because a total fire ban has a big impact on the community. And DFES understands that, and certainly local government understands that as well, which is why when a total fire ban is declared, it is an average day, and we need to be doing all that we can to make sure the community is safe. In terms of a harvest vehicle movement ban, they are imposed by the local government. So the City of Swan will impose a harvest vehicle movement ban when conditions in the city are conducive to the spread of fire above the normal. If we have a series of fires across the city or across the landscape that have drained resourcing and we're reliant on external services to support us in that, we may impose a harvest vehicle movement ban to reduce further fire being introduced in the landscape accidentally. So hot vehicles driving through paddocks, earthworks carried out in paddocks and the like. So that's something that's imposed by the local government. The other time that a harvest vehicle movement ban might be imposed is when DFES declares total fire ban and particular indices reach a certain trigger point in the local government. So if the grassland fire danger index exceeds 35, the local government does not get a choice, and we're required by legislation to impose that as well to further support the total fire ban and make sure that outspread of fire in the local government is managed as best we can. So in terms of the website and providing you with emergency information, this provides you with both a list and a map. So if you're traveling and you're not particularly sure where you are, you can reference yourself on the map using the geo feature in your phone, and you can see what information is current for where you are, which is a really good bit of information, a really good tool if you're traveling around. So you can see alerts and warnings, and they'll provide you with that. So the 3-tier approach to alerts and warnings. Bushfire advice is that there's a fire in the area. You need to remain alert and conditions may change. A watch and act is a little bit more serious in so much that you need to be making a decision at this point. So am I going to stay and defend my property? Am I going to leave? And like I spoke about at the beginning of this presentation, it's important that you know what you're going to do before that occurs. So we want to make sure that community understands the importance of having a plan now and communicating it with all of the family about what it is you're going to do if a fire moves up into your subdevelopment or your residence. So make sure it's communicated, make sure it's documented, and then at that trigger point when that watch and act's issued, you know straight away, I'm going to pack up, I'm going to leave, I'm going down to mum's. So the next tier is the most serious, and it's an emergency warning. When an emergency warning is issued, you are going to be provided with very, very specific information and advice on how you are going to survive through that. It's important that you follow that information. It's going to give specific information about sheltering in place or relocating, and if you are to relocate, the directions in which you need to relocate. So yeah, it's important that we take it from a credible source as an Emergency WA or 720 AVC. So finally tonight, we'll have a quick chat with regards to the Fire Chap. So this is a tool that's been developed by DFES, and it's an assistance tool to help you make your bushfire survival plan. So in a bushfire, the biggest killer, and this is and come out of the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, but the biggest killer is indecisiveness. So to survive a bushfire, you need to know what you're going to do well before, so you can make those decisions when you're under stress. It's been proven time and time again with communities coming under threat of bushfire that the stress caused by bushfire doesn't make you act normally. You make poor decisions. You forget critical things that you would take, such as passports, bank details, Medicare cards, contact information, mobile phone charges, all of the stuff that you would think about now to take when you're placed under pressure of a bushfire and it's impacting your community and it's happening where you didn't think it was going to happen, causes you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, which is why we encourage people to go through the process now, have the chat with the family at home, determine what the plan is and document it. Particularly if you're living in Perth Hills. Prevalence of bushfire in the Perth Hills is huge. We're impacted by it every year, multiple times. And it isn't just bound by day. So we've had significant fires develop in the city of Swan overnight when people are asleep. So that's a really hard thing as a fire manager to make sure the community is aware and that they can enact their bushfire plan. Because everyone doesn't get mobile phone reception, nobody's checking the internet, nobody's on Facebook, we're all tucked up in bed, and I'm trying to get information out to the community to say, you need to act now. It's important that you've got that plan. So if you do get that information last minute, you're not having to worry about what am I going to do, where am I going to go. So the fire chat will help you prepare by asking 3 basic questions. So when will you know to leave? Where are you going to go? And which way are you going to go? So it's a really good bit of information. It's available online, or if you want a hard copy, there's a hard copy available as well. Hard copies can be grabbed from your local bushfire brigade. So Bullsbrook, West Swan, East Swan, West Gidgee and East Gidgee. The tools take the users through a series of initial questions, and we talk about your ability to stay and defend and what's required to do that effectively, or if you need to leave early and what you need to do to get to that point. So based on the inputs that you provide into it, it will help you determine whether you should be leaving or staying, and it provides the templates to write the appropriate plan based on that. So for most people, we found that the online tool will provide you with the best information. It's easily accessible. It's interactive as well, so it provides with ready access to additional information, and you can click in and gain further information to tailor it more specifically to your property. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. Hopefully you've gained some information about preparing your property and certainly the legal obligations that you have as a landowner in the city of Swan in terms of preparing your property as we head into the high threat period. Just a reminder again that the city's fire team is available to support you through the preparedness of your property. I encourage you to make contact through the City of Swan website or through the email. Otherwise, stay safe this summer and hopefully I don't have to see you. Thank you.